My dear Americans, my name is John Hancock. Forgive my intrusion, but I feel compelled to share a few thoughts on this celebration of Independence Day. As it was predicted by my good friend John Adams many, many years ago. 12 years ago today, I signed rather conspicuously, I might add, the Declaration of Independence. Let me be clear on one detail. I was the only delegate on that day to sign the Declaration. Most everybody else signed on August 2nd after what's known as the engrossed version was put out. Technically, on July 4th, 1776, I was the only person in the nation to commit treason against Great Britain. A rather nice thing to know. I happen to use something like this. There's a quill pen. Something about the pen being mightier than the sword. It proved to be quite workable, although we did need a sword. After the American Revolution, John Adams noted, and I want to read his notes very carefully here, quote, "Liberty must at all hazards be supported. We have a right to it, derived from our Maker. But if we had not, our fathers have earned and bought it for us at the expense of their ease, their estates, their pleasure, and their blood." Unquote. I grew up with John Adams. He was a very brilliant man. And how is it that this great nation, founded on such dedication and self-sacrifice, can have somehow evolved into a collection of weaklings who are craving, quote, a safe place? Where in the world did that come from, and what has happened? We're better than that. After Lexington and Concord, I met with 55 other men from other colonies. And we met with a common purpose and certainly with a common objective. I'd like to talk about those, if I may, for a moment. The purpose was independence from a centralized tyrannical government. It was Great Britain at the time. The objective was freedom. Freedom to exercise our inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You have heard all of those phrases many, many times, I'm sure. In our declaration, we emphasized that no other governmental document has ever asserted. We had the firm belief that these rights came from a power greater than any so-called government or monarch in the world, that they are self-evidently endowed by our Creator. To my knowledge, every constitution that was ever written since then by any other country claims that these rights came from that government. We are very unique in that regard. As for our common objective, in the Declaration, we asserted that the natural state of mankind is, and we knew this to be a controversial idea, is freedom. And the proof is the length of which any man, woman, or child will go to regain it once it is taken. Furthermore, freedom is a very personal concept. All too often, we consider ourselves many times part of a group or a sect, and is part of what they or we are. I would suggest that each American take the time at this time of the year and look into your hearts individually and do your best to discover who you are as an individual. Nobody can paint you with the same brush as everybody else is. We didn't like it then. I suggest you might not like it now. It brings me back to that massive question about freedom. When I say freedom, I do not mean poetic sloppiness. My goodness, freedom from what? Or freedom from fear? Or freedom from the necessity of earning a darned living? I mean freedom from compulsion. Freedom from rule by physical force, better known as political freedom. That's what we fought for. In the Declaration, as individual states, we refuse to be defined by the needs, ideas, or perceptions of others. In fact, as governor of Massachusetts, I personally refuse to ratify the new Constitution of the United States unless they appended a Bill of Rights guaranteeing our individual freedoms. That Constitution was too powerful in our mind. The funny thing is, that argument's still going today. Actually, this is what we fought for, to escape a national government. We cherished a federal concept where the power rested with the individual states or with the people. Somehow I think we've lost that a little bit. Why have you changed it? Think about that. Are you suggesting that all the wisdom in the world rests in Washington, D.C.? I suggest otherwise. And I suggest you take a good look at what's around you. The struggle began with Washington, Adams, and Hamilton. They were Federalists. They wanted a strong central government. They had a big argument with a guy named Tom Jefferson, another good friend of mine. We had many glasses of Madeira together. But he was adamant about states and individual rights. Funny thing is, that argument continues today, doesn't it? But this raises a more important question, and how do we resolve it? Again, I reflect on Madison, Hamilton, Franklin, Jefferson, Washington, certainly my good friend John Adams. We have long resisted asking for their guidance. Perhaps we have feared in doing so because we would then sacrifice our individuality, which we so cherish. But I would suggest that that identity is not entirely our own. Perhaps we fear that an appeal to those men might be taken for weakness. This is not so. I feel we should come to understand that who we are is who they were. And that has not changed. I suggest that we look back and we draw them to us. And for this moment, we as a nation are really the whole reason they existed at all. They did all they did without pay and with a lot of self-sacrifice. When asked about what form of government was created, my friend Ben Franklin put it very, very well. We have created a republic, if you can keep it. Please do. This is John Hancock. Happy 4th of July.